Okay, welcome everybody to this important session. I think one of the most important during this EENA conference. We are going to talk about how to improve accessibility for people with disabilities, and we have lots of vendors with new technology, and this allows us for improving the quality for deaf and hearing impaired people to speak directly with 112. We have the concept of total conversation, which I'm sure we will hear more about during this session. And we also probably will talk about the upcoming EU legislation. So without further ado, I will start to introducing Thor Nielsen, who is the Vice President of Global Sales at nWise. The floor is yours, Thor.
Thank you. Thank you, Björn. Yeah, presentation is there. Hi, everyone. I'm Thor Nielsen, and I've been working with... is the sound okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And I've been working with RTT and accessibility since 2005. We work with telecom relay services and access to 112. And I present to you a little bit of our experience, both in Europe and in North America, as well as what's happening in both countries. So one question that's what we're here also to discuss is that during emergency situations, people who are deaf, blind, and hard of hearing, it's extremely difficult for them to make an emergency call. And it has been very clear during the corona crisis in many countries where the isolation and lack of information has been a huge problem. Especially vulnerable are also the deaf-blind community. But there are many things happening. As you know, we've been discussing new technology, next generation 112 for the past couple of days and for the past years as well. So good things are happening. And so since NG911 and NG112 are digital, then it's possible to have different kind of information, not only voice. There is a technology or a standard called real-time text, and real-time text is a form of communication where there's a call is set up, and then the text, the characters are when they are typed, they appear on the other side as well. So you can see the communication as it goes, you can interrupt, and voice is available as well. Total conversation, as Björn was saying, is a standardized form of communication with text, video, and voice over IP. It's been standardized by the ITU, International Telecom Union, since 2003. There are some updates coming up, but it's there and it's been available. Relay services or telecom relay services, I don't know how many in your countries, how many have telecom relay services. It has been recommended by the European Union since, I would say since the end of the 90s, early 2000, but as a recommendation. And there is even some standardization, harmonized relay services from 2009. So there's a lot of very good information, standards, and supported by legislation. EENA has prepared a fantastic information, which is in the link, but you can get the link via the EENA homepage as well. It's a unique document, I think, in Europe, where you can have information about legislation, about services and technology available. So really have a look at it, it's really good. When we come into real-time text and communication for 112, we have to think about standards and compliance. So the standards are actually described in the technical requirements. EENA from North America has one called I3, and there's equivalent standards at NG112. The new legislation, the European Electronic Communication Code from 2018, member states have until 1st of January 23 to apply the requirements, and real-time text, total conversation, and telecom relay services are mentioned and required in different forms in the legislation. You can download the legislation from the EU in all languages in the member states. Another standard which is important that we're using SIP, which is the same standard for voice, also voice over IP. So we're not trying to create something which is in contrast to everything which is available already. So it can be added into the network. A little bit of a comparison between North America and Europe. The requirements in North America are very, I would say, very tough and very specific. RTT is required in the network. So all wireless providers, if you have a cell phone, RTT is embedded in the phone, and it has to be available. That's it. There is a ongoing process of modernizing even the networks in the US, and so we call that native RTT. It's available in the network, but native RTT is not available for, it's not accessible for everyone. A deaf-blind person cannot use the native functionality in the phone. So there are also what we call over-the-top apps. Let's say apps you download from iOS or Android. So it's open that you can have RTT, OTT apps using the same standard. And NINA, we're discussing, I'm part of a couple of committees at NINA, and in next year we're going to be starting testing OTT and native RTT to a PSAP in different states. And so the requirement is that you should be able to call directly with RTT or via the relay service, a telecom relay service, video or text. And the relay services in the US are available 24/7. And what NINA has also done, which I think is a very good piece of information, it's called Communication Modalities Working Group. And there we have an Excel sheet, and we're working on a document now that presents all the different modalities of communication that can be used on NG911, and if or they are available on legacy 911. And I think that's a very interesting and important piece of information because it helps the PSAPs also to understand how to work with those calls when they come in, but also for managers and state regulators, so they understand the whole picture of what is available. And as it says there, so it could be direct calls to 911. There are the text phones, the old-fashioned text phones are still available in the US. SMS text to 911 is open for everyone, although only about 50% coverage in the US. And also because 911 can also get a call from a multi-party conferencing, for instance, if it's a language interpretation. And also there is Internet of Things, some new apps or new systems, even in the car, if the car crashes, information sent to 911. So all this information is gathered in a document, in a chart, and we're preparing the document now. Here in Europe, I would say, unfortunately, we're a little bit behind. The new legislation, which was approved in 2018, starts to be mandated 1st of January 23, which is actually quite soon. And it mandates that everyone should be able to call 112. So it could be with RTT, or as it is now also via the relay services. But then the relay services have to be available 24/7 because something may happen in the middle of the night, so access has to be possible. There are some good practices. We've been working in this area for many years now, and from our experience in Northern Europe, there's relay services available 24/7, and some of the countries are considering or already now have RTT in 112. And a good example is the Netherlands, where since 2014, a deaf individual, deaf, blind, and hard of hearing, can make a direct call to 112. The advantage of that is that if the call is broken, because again, it's real-time text, so they make a call to 112. It's not a text message, it's not an SMS. So if the communication is interrupted, then the PSAP and the first respondent will know that something happened to the call. They send an ambulance to the caller. So there's a process on how to work with it. Once again, in the Netherlands, they're using standard RTT. There's a new RFC, which is actually replacing this one, but it's on the details. And something which is important is, it's been also being discussed a lot in the US, that me as a citizen, I should be able to use the same application that I normally use to make phone calls. And this is very important because I have an app for 112 in my phone, but in the situation of distress, I think what you do, and the first thing you do is make a call the way you're used to making a phone call. I think I fortunately never had to call 112, but I think I would just take the phone and dial 112. And the same is for the deaf community. In the Netherlands, where relay service is available since the 80s and have been modernized after years, every deaf person can have an app to make phone calls. And with that app, they can press a button. And when they press the button, they call directly to 112, or they just dial 112, and the call is directed to the emergency. Geolocation is passed through to the service as well. So if the call is interrupted, it could be a deaf-blind individual that has difficulty in typing in a distress situation, but then the call is set up and they know where to send an ambulance. And voice is available so that the PSAP can also feel the surroundings if for different noises, or get a picture of the situation. And text is voice, of course, but text is also recorded in the calls. In Sweden, we have direct SMS to the service. It's been available for a number of years. Once again, I think it's about almost the whole, anybody who's deaf can also get the app to make phone calls, which are free. And I think it's about 80% of the population who have the apps. And it's using real-time text, RTT. And once again, with the same app, they can just press a button in the app and dial to 112. But in Sweden, it goes via the relay service. So if I use text and voice, because, for instance, I can sign, then it goes to the text relay service and then to 112. But if I'm signing, then it goes to the video relay with sign language, then to 112. And all services are available 24/7, which is really important. This is also something that we try to work with when we implement RTT and discuss how the call should be handled. So my understanding from the projects and the discussions we have is that the optimal way is to handle RTT the same way that you handle a voice call, so that when the call is made, you can have the primary interview. What happened? Where are you? And then at that point, you can connect to different specialized, the secondary when it's necessary. But that's something that should be elaborated and discussed, depending, of course, on the system, on the country. There's a new concept. The legislation in the US is being redrafted. There's something called the American with Disability Acts, and it was from '92. And now it's being redrafted at the Senate, and the proposal is supposed to be voted this year. It's not controversial, so probably can get Republicans and Democrats to vote for it. But something which is important, it's meaningful accessibility to 112. The word meaningful is going to be added in the American legislation. And I think also here in Europe, we have to think about it. And some years ago, I remember being in some discussions when in some countries a deaf person was supposed to send a fax to emergency services. I hope that's not the case anymore, but even SMS, to be honest, if I can make a call to 112, I will try to make a call. If I can't, SMS is good, but it has to be meaningful accessibility. And as it is the case in the US and in the Netherlands, you can call direct if you want. But if you consider that it's difficult to call direct, so you can call via the video interpreter, and that's fine, but I should be able to decide how to make my calls. No registration requirements. It's very important, because if I have to register, it will be difficult, because as I said, I never made a 112 call, so when it happens, I'll be very distressed. There's a little bit of a difference in the US than in Europe. In the US, there is a practice of sending additional information to the PSAP. So if the person is deaf-blind, that information is passed through in the call with the caller identification. And if there's any other complication that it's used, let's say practice in the US, that should be available. Geolocation is a requirement, both in the US and will be here in Europe in 1st of January 23. But also it's important to define the different process and also work with the deaf associations so that people know what's available, how to make phone calls and so on. So from the PSAP perspective, how to call back, because there is a problem if the call is placed by a relay service. Is the PSAP supposed to call back? Is the interpreter in the relay service supposed to call back? That is very important. And call recording, it has been a big discussion in the US, for instance, where voice is recorded even if it's a relay service. But they say, well, but that's only part of the communication. What about the rest of the communication? It should be recorded as well. If it's possible to record video and text, that's also preferable. Just couple of words about us. We are working in 13 different countries. We're working with applications and systems for the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing. In 10 European countries already today. Our platform is used mostly to place calls to 112 via voice, meaning the agent or the interpreter at the telecom relay services. We're a small company from Sweden, 23 employees. We work with development and customization 24/7 because we have customers working with emergency services and in the US as well. And we have our system for relay services. We're releasing a new functionality, the conference bridge, RTT, to enable calls. And also the specialized apps for the deaf-blind. As being a deaf-blind person, RTT is not readable for a deaf-blind person. The text comes very quick to read on Braille. So it needs to be a specialized application so that the deaf-blind can read text at their own pace. I think it's important to consider the ecosystem of let's say, the whole concept. Okay, 112 is actually part of the system. So, time is over, sorry. I think if there's I don't know if you have time for questions?
Yeah, sure. We have time for questions. So we'll give you opportunity to put questions to Thor. Hands up. Any questions?
Yes.
Gotcha, of course.
Thank you. My question is, of course, everybody knows about deaf, blind, people that cannot speak. But what about people that, without having an identified inability to do so at some point, may become unable to speak or hear in a definite point in time. Do you need registration for using these type of technologies in Sweden and in other parts of the world where you cater for?
You don't need registration to call the emergency services, but what you would need is some kind of an application to make sure you can make calls. Some governments, like in Sweden as an example, in the Nordic countries, if you have problems with speech disability as an example, we've been talking about hearing, but then you can get equipment that enables you to do like text to speech, and then that way you can make a connection. Or you could use an SMS. And then there's a question, because some countries require that you register for SMS, and that is a hinder, I think. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we will move on. Thank you very much, Thor.
Thank you.
An applause
Thank you so
for
much.
Thor.
Thank you.
Next, we will hear from Benoit Mongourdin. He's head of service in the National Relay Center 114 at Grenoble University Hospital in France. It's a filmed take, so you won't be able to ask him any questions afterwards, but I hope we will get all the answers in the presentation.
Hello everybody, thanks a lot to EENA to have invited me. My name is Benoit Mongourdin. I'm a French medical doctor in charge of an accessibility service for the deaf in Grenoble University Hospital and head of the National Relay Center 114. I really planned to be physically present with you this year, but some issues made me stay in Grenoble, so I really apologize, and I had to record my presentation. So I hope it would be nevertheless interesting. Well, so what are the needs of deaf and hard of hearing people? For the deaf, first, for the deaf and hard of hearing people, the question is not how do you hear, the question is which language do you use? And furthermore, it's in this situation, which language makes you the most at ease? That is why to make a call, you can see on this picture that is the mobile app interface, there are two buttons, one to choose to enter 114 call in French and the other one in sign language. You have to choose between two languages. The politics of government make universal accessibility a requirement. It means that any public service has to be accessible for any citizen, whatever his specificities. The goal is not to create an additional parallel service for parallel people, but the goal is to find how current services can be reached and used. But it's obviously unrealistic to require from all 400 PSAPs to implement 24,7 high skills for specific accessibility. So National Relay Center works as a plugin, we would say, that allows non-vocal sign language or other unusual type of calls entry, the usual emergency call. So it's not a new number, it's a service. The stakeholders are the public authorities. The national steering is Comité Interministériel du Handicap. That means Interministerial Committee on Disability. That is a committee that coordinates all the actions between all ministries in the field of disability and accessibility. Public funding and co-steering are made by two ministries: Ministry of Interior, in charge of police and firefighters, and Ministry of Health for medical part of the work. and implementation and management are done by Grenoble University Hospital. And we used to work very closely with users' organizations from the beginning, organizations for deaf users, hard of hearing users, deafblind users, and aphasiac users, and so on. So, the goal is to make non-telephonic requests reach the PSAPs. Here are the PSAPs, all the PSAPs in France. And here is an emergency situation. So, either the victim or a witness makes a call, but he can't phone. So, he contacts 114 from a mobile app he loaded before or from a personal computer. He can choose. And then here, 114 operators are trained to ask exactly the same questions as a PSAP operator would. So, firefighters, medical services, police, any situation. During this conversation, 114 operators pick up all the information as quickly as possible, and then they transmit a statement sheet and collected information to the relevant PSAP in France. They choose if it's a medical problem, a police problem, or firefighters problem, and they contact anywhere in France the most relevant. Then the PSAP with this information is able to make a decision, and PSAPs inform 114, and then 114 tells the user what action will be done. It could be an advice, it could be firefighters are coming in 15 minutes, it could be anything. So it works in both ways. Well, now we implemented Total Conversation. What is it? Total Conversation is an ITU standard that provides simultaneously video, voice, and real-time text on the same interface. That you can see, you have text here, you have video here, caller and the operator, and there you can hear the voice if you want. So it looks like something existing already, like WhatsApp, like Skype, and so on. But real-time text is not chat. It's much more fluid. Anything you type, anything you erase in the same time, it's seen in real time by the other person. So, which benefits? This standard is a comprehensive tool, really. It brings communication to the broadest range of population needs. Deaf people can use sign language and video as fluid as phone speaking. Hard of hearing callers can voice speak and read back the other speaker's words. Deafblind users can express in sign language or typing and get the words of the other speaker by text using a braille transcription device and read it on braille. It also allows many other possibilities for hearing aphasiacs, visual information, pictograms, for people who have speech impairment, people with cognitive impairment, and so on. And obviously, for the emergency services, using video can enrich the information to emergency services. Additionally, using the 114 app from a mobile phone allows to collect geolocation coordinates throughout the GPS chip on the phone, which are usually very accurate, you know that, and can be vital for a victim. So, here is the status of implementation, step by step. I would say, first, public authority acknowledgement of the interest of the service. Despite the obvious question of accessibility, service benefits had to be explained to public authorities, and so the relevance of funding. This was the first step and not the least. Second, we had to build all the call handling and relationship with PSAP's processes. It was a prerequisite. PSAPs are responsible for their decisions, so we had to follow their rules. Third, implementing a brand new, reliable 24/7 multimedia technology in a public service. It also means a specific interface to manage various multimedia calls, orienting them toward the correctly trained operator, deaf operator or hearing operator, managing simultaneous and distinct calls, video calls, text calls, voice calls, and so on. Technology is a real challenge, but without minimizing it, technology is never sufficient to solve the accessibility issues. It's just a tool. So the real challenge is human skills. I mean, how operators will deal with calls from people who never had access to emergency services in an usual visual language using communication media nobody uses in other service. Everything is brand new and it needs real new human skills and new organization. So, the basic rule is the users are the experts in their own uses. Following this rule engages several strong structural decisions. Like, the first one is, since the beginning we plan to build a big cultural team with deaf operators and hearing operators working together. Deaf operators are in charge of sign language calls, because the deaf are the best speaking persons in sign language. And hearing operators are in charge of French calls, vocal or text. The users have to be involved too in the development processes, which means first working very closely with the deaf community, have deaf experts in decision processes, and learning little known users from users as deafblind, aphasiacs, and so on. It needs cultural and linguistic really strong involvement of the staff. That means first the staff has to learn sign language. It's like a prerequisite to understand the best the issues of cultural points and so on. And second, deaf people, deaf professionals have to be included in staff. So we need staff members, deaf staff members that would be in position of decision. That's a real cultural commitment involvement, I would say. And we need quality control processes. We have to build very special quality control processes, implement a simple procedure to collect feedback from the users, easy for the users to send the feedback, and then have deaf experts to analyze sign language call recordings for the operators to improve their skills and to improve the service quality. Well, what about 112? The National Relay Center, 114 National Relay Center, is not an additional emergency call service. It's not an additional number in France. It is an accessibility service to existing numbers, whatever the number. However, we can say it works for deaf users as a unique call handling for any emergency situation, as could be a unique 112 emergency number. But this is another story. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, if you need further information, don't hesitate to contact me. Here is my contact. Thank you very much. Have a good day and goodbye.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Benoit Mongourdin. We will go directly to Lithuania and we'll present Tadas Maroscikas. He's the deputy head of the Lithuanian Emergency Response Center, and Darius Indrišionis, call taker, and Kęstutis Vaišnora, president of the Lithuanian Deaf Association. So I think we will hear about the emergency app that Lithuania has introduced from various perspectives. Go ahead, Tadas.
Thank you, Björn. Hello, everyone. I'll be sharing our latest development, the app, that a tool for the deaf or hearing impaired persons. And before I begin, I want to thank Kęstutis and Darius for joining me here on the stage. I think we can provide a broader picture, and you will be able to ask, and I will leave some time for their comments about how it is functioning and for their feedback to be shared. So shortly, it's about the scheme. We have one emergency number as of 1st of October. Old numbers are not working anymore. And you see that there are varieties of methods or communications that can be, when people can contact 112 in Lithuania: e-call, regular voice call, SMS, and today we have an app which is called 112 Lietuva. Here is a view of our organization. We have two PSAPs, and we have SMS service that is served in one PSAP, and app is served and call takers located in Vilnius, in the PSAP in Vilnius. And we have a fire dispatch unit which is not taking calls in the south of the country. So we have some 6,000 deaf people and about 40,000 hearing impaired. And Lithuanian Sign Language is recognized an official language, so there was a need and requirement from the deaf community that they wanted to talk sign language when they call 112. And naturally, the SMS service, which was introduced back in 2014, was not so convenient, and their language, written language, is not so easy sometimes to understand. And people, call takers sometimes need several replies to make several replies until they understand what is going on. Also, good coverage of 4G allows to use the app everywhere in the country, and the good penetration of smartphones among people. It is not a big thing to have a smartphone, and the ease of use of the other apps, so we made it a little bit similar to what they are using today. So the app, we built a full ecosystem. It is the app itself for the smartphone. We also built the server backend, and we also built a dedicated CAT, which is simplified, but it was dedicated only to this, to serve and to function along with the app. The app supports two operating systems, Apple iOS and Android. It allows for video call and real-time text. The interface is available in 4 languages. There is a need for initial registration and number confirmation. This is a process to take when you download it. And for today, it is available only to the deaf people, because we have only one sign language interpreter on our side, and we didn't want and also our call taker is also only one, so we didn't want all people who start using it, at least in the beginning. It is also restricted for today just for Lithuanian numbers, but maybe we will be lifting this restriction later on. And we started as of July 2020, so it is more than a year that is already in production. Other feature is the smartphone permissions, which is not maybe a feature of the app itself, but the permission shall be like accepted by the user, so that app can use location and other functions of the smartphone. If there is a low bandwidth for the video call, there is a possibility to switch to text instantly during the same call. The user or the caller can add video and photo attachments from the phone, like in the WhatsApp or Viber or whatsoever. We also see the indicators delivered or sent, delivered, or read. If it is text. There is also blacklist for temporary blocking of a user, callback, as well as templates for text templates for call taker to make it easier and quicker to send a text which is standardized. Here's these pictures. You see the call taking process, so it is synergy. We work together. We have a sign language interpreter 24/7 on our premises. He does the work, daily interpretations to the deaf community via Skype. And if there is a call received from the app, we invite the sign language interpreter from the next desk. And so this communication is starting. So it's how to say, it's common work to make to understand the caller and to make it and to provide the right response. So the pictures below just illustrates how it is working. As I mentioned, we have special CAD. We didn't integrate with our voice calls app or eCall CAD, just because the budget was too small for that. So it is our call taker has to work and to use the app dedicated CAD, and then to transfer copy paste information to our CAD. So it is looks like scary, but it is so today. Awareness and training was also important, and we worked in cooperation with Deaf People Association to reach out as many as possible. Deaf people. We had common visits to local communities. Deaf People Association made several videos explaining how to install the app, how to use the app, and all around that. We also set dedicated dates and time slots for test callings. We knew that we need to try it, so we understood that we must accept, and it would be a good experience for them to try. So we did set specific times where we expecting people to call us for testing purposes. So in 1 year we have around 1,300 registered users. We had received nearly 1,000 real-time texts and more than 1,000 video calls, including training calls, of course. And real incidents, you also see the majority of them were for ambulance. We also have if you can begin texting right away with the text, or they can also choose from the guide, illustrated guide. So there are several clicks and situations painted in the app, so they can just select those and to continue to the chat with the information already provided by meaning of the pictures. So it's in principle I'm done with the PowerPoint. So I would like to ask Kęstutis to provide his comments and share experience from the end users, real end users community. Kęstutis, floor is yours.
Okay. Okay. First of all, I want to tell you that deaf people doesn't applaud like you. We applaud like this. I'm very grateful for being here. Today we met with the Latvian Deaf Association, and we showed our 112 app for them, and we made a test call to via 112 app. Because as Tadas mentioned, we wrote the word testas, like test, and we made that call. Because if you don't use this app regularly, you will forget how to use it. So sometimes we make test calls. First of all, I want to tell you that the sign language is the main communication form for deaf and hard of hearing people. Before this app was launched in Lithuania, there was emergency text provided only. For example, if person is in an emergency situation and he needs to write a long text, it's impossible for deaf and hard of hearing people to do that. I am the president of Lithuanian Deaf Association, and I was in a car accident myself, and I just didn't know what to do in that moment. So I'm very grateful for the 112 app team who invited us to create this app together. There are a lot of tech ITs who want to create apps and just take the money, but they don't think how to provide properly this app for deaf and hard of hearing people. So it is very important that 112 app team and Deaf Association work together in order to create the app that met the need of deaf community. When this app was launched, we also gained the sign language interpreter services 24/7. As Tadas mentioned already, if the sign language interpreter provides other not emergency sign language calls via Skype and there is emergency call, they can just finish this call and go to provide the interpreter services for the person in need. And also there are various images in this app that the community can use. As I mentioned before, the most important thing is to work together. Now our main goal is to teach deaf community how to use this app properly. In Lithuania, Lithuanian government provides some compensation for buying like smartphones and other gadgets. Deaf and hard of hearing people can buy smartphones and gain the compensation from the government, and they then can install this app and use it. It is very important to teach our community how to use this app. Because for years and years, deaf people couldn't make an emergency call. And now it's the new life, it's the start of our new life, and we must teach everyone to use this app, to use new technologies in order to avoid some mistakes in emergency situations. Now I can tell all of you that this app, 112 app in Lithuania, meets the need of deaf people. Thank you, Tadas, for working together, and all 112 team. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, Kęstutis. I would also like to give a floor to my colleague Darius, and he will will share his experience of using the system on another end when he is taking calls. Darius.
Good afternoon. What I would like to say is that what is really important for us, for call takers, is that with a call in this app, in this system, you get very useful information. That is, like to say, it's just because all the users are registered before, and when the person in emergency, when the deaf person in emergency is calling us, we are not only getting his location, but also we have, for example, we have his registered address, we have all his, for example, if he filled that information during registration process, about his illnesses, about the door code in the staircase, how to get into the staircase if that's necessary, in which floor he lives. And I think for us, for call takers, in our regular practice, when I think for those people who are taking calls, they know that situation when you get a, like to say, like a silent call, when you hear something, but you are not sure what you hear. Is that aid for help or just a noise, just some mobile phone accidentally switched on the pocket or something? And with this app, we have a possibility, even if getting not enough information during texting, during video call or something, but if we only have a call, and if we can understand that it could be emergency, we have a lot of information to react. We have address, we have a location, we have what's the name of the person, what the illnesses he have, and this is really important. And sometimes joking between each others, between other call takers, we are telling that it would be really useful to use this program not only for deaf people, but also for our, like to say, permanent clients, for some people who permanently calling us, having some problems after a long period consumption of alcohol and cannot tell, like to say, their address, their name, or some other consequences.
Okay. Thank you, Darius, and thank you all for your attention, and we have some time for questions if you have to any.
Yeah, you're welcome. Microphone is on the way. It was down here. Or was it Severn? Okay.
Okay. Is this application for free, or you have to pay for something?
For the user,
yeah,
it is free. You can download. Everyone can download from the stores, and the payment is made by us to the developer. I mean, for the maintenance, for initial development of the app, and then all infrastructure. And we now buying support services, which is like operational costs, but it is borne by us.
All right, and then about you using those data, the data using, is this payment or is it for free?
No, it is using your data based on your plan. I mean, it is, we cannot, there is no technical way to make it free of charge. But you know, the plans people have, the gigabytes of it is included in the plan, so it's not a problem today.
Hi. I was wondering about the pictograms that you mentioned. How do you establish what the proper pictograms are to be used in the application? Is it something standardized? Is it something that you established together with the Deaf Association? Thanks.
Yes, we had several internal discussions with our call takers. We saw the statistics of regular calls, and probably not all situations are in pictograms, but that happens most often. Fire, injury, temperature, fever, drowning person, assault for the police. So it is, we have probably, if I remember well, 4 pictograms for police, 4 for fire, and 4 pictograms for the ambulance. But you also always can opt for the text other. Also, there is a button other. So if you don't find the appropriate app, and we didn't want to make, so it's like 10 pictograms available or so, you know, it's like, it would be not so easy to find quickly. So it was like internal discussion and based on experience by handling voice calls.
Any more questions? Yeah, Iracha?
Björn?
Oh, sorry.
I want to add some information. Those pictograms were created by deaf people. Deaf artists created that. We talked with the 112 team, what's the common situations. We collect the information and give that to deaf artists to create that.
Yes, it was covered by their side.
And other aspect, because it is very useful, because the deaf children could use these pictograms. For example, if their parents are in emergency, they can use this app and call for emergency.
Thank you. Iracha, a short question.
Sorry, sorry, it's for Tadas, in fact. We've seen that, I mean, in the picture of the PIS app, the operators have the sign language interpreter in the back. Is it always agreed by the operators to have their image being shown to the callers using sign language interpretation? Because in the Reach 112 project, we found out several years ago that some operators, PIS app operators, were not happy of having their face shown to people calling for emergencies.
Actually, we didn't think of that, and we don't have such problem. Darius, can you answer this question?
Actually, as I remember, no one of our colleagues refused to work in such condition, but now we changed the app a little bit, and now when you connect deaf person with an interpreter, he sees interpreter. The operator is not seen.
Okay, so that's the answer.
Thank you very much. We conclude this with a big round of applause in 2 ways, this way and so. Yeah. Thank you very much. The next presentation is in 5 minutes. We'll evolve around implementation of next generation 112 in this track 1 room. Thank you.